Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back again to mess around with the 150-gallon Aquascape Aquarium. It's a lovely tank. I'm really happy with how this tank is progressing. I think the last count, I've gotten over 42 different species growing in this tank. It is becoming a serious mess. So I've got a long video here today of me poking around and making some changes in here. I've got to kind of make some configuration modification changes. Does that even make any sense? Hopefully it does. Hopefully it makes some sense for you. I've got to reposition a bunch of plants, add some rocks, trim a bunch of stuff. There's just a whole bunch of work to get done. I'm going to be out of town for a couple of days, so I really am just kind of pushing to get this done before I'm gone. So naturally, plants can kind of root and get a little bit acclimated to where they're at while I'm gone for a couple of days, so I don't so I basically don't get in here and start messing around. It actually will give it like 4 days of just the fish being fed by the house sitter, and allow things to kind of just grow the way I want them to be, you know. This tank is kind of consistently being messed with on a regular basis. I am constantly messing around in this tank. It is just sort of a labor of love. And one of my big goals with this aquarium is to actually get a significant amount of species in here that are all, at least from similar water conditions, but just to give people an idea that you aren't necessarily limited to just 3, 4, or 5 different plants in one aquarium. But you do have to do some homework on, you know, how are these plants going to fit all in a tank together, and how's it going to look when you're done? Because, you know, you could just stick a ton of plants in there, and realistically, you might end up with a crazy jungle that might look okay for a day or two, but ultimately you'll run into some of the problems that I am right now, and that's building my layers and making sure that the right plants are in the right areas. So, you know, I have a lot of fun with this tank. I think realistically, if this was the only tank I owned, I probably wouldn't be that upset. It sort of falls in with just being the perfect size. I mean, it's 5 feet long, it's 2 feet high and 2 feet front to back. It's just a nice amount of space to be able to work in on a regular basis. I don't know how many liters that is. How many liters is 150 gallons? 800? Is that right? So this being 150 US gallons is 570 liters. I'd be pretty happy with this tank, realistically, if I was going to be running just this tank. Obviously, I have my other tanks and stuff like that, but realistically, my goal is to give a representation to somebody that wanted to just have one tank and not be hyper limited to just a few different plants, and something that they could maintain long term and be able to explain how it's done. This is a 150-gallon system with a 60-gallon sump on it. So that's where all the filtration, the CO2, the heat, all that stuff is all happening down in the sump down below. The only thing that we really have to contend with is the center overflow in this. It was originally designed as a reef aquarium, so we do have that center overflow in the middle, which is a little off-putting in my opinion. So that would be the one thing that I would change, is I would probably move it to one of the sides just for the, basic aesthetic reasons. In a reef tank, it's not that big of a deal to have the overflow in the center, but in an aquascaped freshwater, it's kind of in the way. It really kind of cramps up depth in the very center of the tank, but it's also kind of fun to work with and work around and kind of hide and put plants there to keep it hidden. Most of the rock in here is Sierra stone, that kind of stuff. Pretty straightforward. I don't really have any driftwood in here anymore, and one of the reasons for that is that with driftwood, it will break down over time. So you do have to it's something that you will have to mess with that ends up essentially changing shape, right? So let's say you have a piece of driftwood in there, it's in there for 2 years or something like that, it breaks down, then it's time to replace it. When it comes time to replace it, you have to replace it with a different piece of driftwood that's not gonna fit exactly in the same spot. Now you could go hunting around and find something that's really close, but it's not really gonna be exact. So I've kept this pretty much just to the rocks and the plants being the main kind of focus as far as the scape goes. And I'm pretty happy with it so far. Obviously, you guys will notice in the video I am adding some small stones and moving things around and stuff like that, because it's just part of the evolution where I get a little bit bored and I need a little more rock work in my life. And so that's why I'm adding some of those pieces in, just to kind of fill out and help me keep track of where things are supposed to go. Also, they're great placeholders for that. If you've watched some of the recent videos, you'll notice that I have been getting in some new plants. I have been ordering in some stuff that, you know, I just either have never had, or it's been a really long time since I've had it. I will be doing more focused videos on those plants as I kind of work through the ins and outs of some of them. Some of them are quite easy because I've kept before. Some of the new plants, you guys know, I normally wait at least 60 days, 90 days before I really kind of give my experience of messing with them, and really don't necessarily like to jump in right away, like after a week, like, oh look, this plant's doing great. Well, I like to have a little bit more of a track record before I do that, but nevertheless, those videos will be coming out at some point in time, so stay tuned for that. That's a bit of our video today. I want to thank you all for tuning in, subscribing, becoming a subscriber, joining up with our, I don't know, we got to figure out a name for us. The old name was the Oceaneers. Do we just stay with the Oceaneers? Because I feel like I'm probably going to put out a shirt in 2020. Should it say Oceaneers on it? I don't know. Let me know. Comment down below. Hit the subscribe button. And then once you're subscribed, do a bell thing. Bye-bye.